Shalom and welcome once again to Pearls of the Torah. I'm Moreh Matan, Pastor Matt McKeown, and I'm so glad to be with you as here we are once again studying this evening the Torah together. Thank you for joining us for the Pearls of the Torah. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Share this teaching on your social media platforms so that as many people as possible can be blessed by it. I once again am Moreh Matan, Pastor Matt McKeown, and it's always a joy to be with you. So this week, our Parashat HaShavua, our Torah portion of the week, is Parashat Terumah. And we could title our thoughts this evening as Sanctuary and Divine Dwelling. So as we look at the Parasha this week, we see a focus on God's instructions on the construction of the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the tabernacle. This is an exciting climax that we've been working toward. Of course, there are several of these in the Exodus narrative and in the wilderness wanderings, but this is one of those mile markers that we have, the construction of the Mishkan. And we have an emphasis on the concept of the Terumah, or this particular offering that is given that sanctifies both the materials and the people. And that's something that I think that we should really focus on. It's not just the materials that are sanctified, but the people who are giving those materials and the people who are building with those materials. So the Or HaChaim, as you know, we are looking at the Or HaChaim all this Torah cycle, and he has an explanation of this, and he says that the term Terumah implies an offering of not only physical resources, but also of spiritual elevation, signifying the willingness of Israel to create a dwelling place for the divine presence. We must remember it was always God's design, and it still is, for him to physically dwell with humankind, and we've messed it up on multiple occasions. But there will one day be that bringing together of heaven and earth, where the divine presence will be physically here with humankind. We see that in the book of the Revelation or the book of Hitgalut. That was always the plan. And eventually it will come to its culmination. So we see that this signifies the willingness of Israel to create the dwelling place for the divine presence. It is God's desire to be with us. We must create the conditions in which he will come and dwell. So we see not only the introduction here to the Torah portion, but number two, we see the construction itself of the sanctuary. Now, let's look first at the Ark of the Covenant. The Or HaChaim says that the Ark is described as the most sacred element, symbolizing the direct dwelling of God. He also explains that its materials, acacia wood overlaid with gold, and the design, the mercy seat with the cherubim, the keruvim, that this reflects the transcendence and immanence of the divine. The ark is also seen in Judaism as a container for the divine presence, linking the physical with the spiritual. We see that mercy seat, that lid of the ark itself, and that's where, of course, Moses would consult with God. It's where many things would happen. It's where the high priest would go once a year into that Holy of Holies. It's very impactful. We also have the menorah. And the Or HaChaim says of the menorah that with its 7 branches, it's a symbol of divine light and of wisdom. And the Or HaChaim emphasizes that its design is not arbitrary. Each branch represents an aspect of divine influence that continuously illuminates Israel's path. The unceasing light of the menorah signifies the eternal nature of God's wisdom. Let's look now at the table of the showbread, or the bread of the presence. The Or HaChaim says that this table is presented as a vessel for the bread of the presence, so the bread of the face, the bread of the faces, symbolizing sustenance and continual nourishment from God. The Or HaChaim explains that this element of the Mishkan teaches that physical nourishment and physical nourishment and spiritual sustenance are intertwined, reinforcing the covenantal bond between God and Israel. Moving on, we see the altar and the court. The Or HaChaim says that the altar, crafted with precise measurements and pure materials, is designed for sacrifices, for offerings, a means by which Israel atones and connects with God, a way to come close to God. The delineation of the court establishes a sanctified space that separates the holy from the profane, a physical boundary reflecting the inner and spiritual separation required for divine service. You see, because we don't have a sanctuary today, we don't have a Mishkan or we don't have a temple, because those don't stand today, we don't see the physical aspect of holy space. We deal in holy time every Shabbat, but we do not see the delineation in a physical way of the holy and the profane. We can really only do that in an abstract way in our lives. We also see the symbolism of the materials and craftsmanship. Number 3, precious materials. The Or HaChaim says that the use of gold, silver, and precious stones in the Mishkan's construction is a deliberate choice to reflect purity, beauty, and the divine quality of the sanctuary. These materials symbolize the inherent value of the sacred, transcending mere physicality to embody spiritual refinement. And I think there's something missing today with that. Now, I know we can go a bit overboard and get a bit ostentatious, but I think sometimes in our synagogues and churches, I think there's not an idea in the modern world of beauty. Not that we worship the beauty, but that there's this idea that the sacred is special. That when we come into a certain space, that it's special, it's set apart, it is different than the rest of the world. We also see, of course, skillful craftsmanship. The Or HaChaim says that the detailed instructions for the construction of the Mishkan emphasize that human skill, when guided by divine instruction, becomes an instrument for manifesting God's glory on earth. There was a wonderful book that was written by a monk a long, long time ago that talked about beauty in doing everyday things. That there is a beauty, they can be an act of worship when even washing the dishes for someone, doing an act of service, or creating a work of art can be a symbol of divine service, of doing something for God in thanks for the talent that he's given us. We should always do our best. Even King David says of the musicians to play skillfully because you're doing it for the Lord. The artistry in the Mishkan's design serves as a model for the harmonious blend of physical labor and spiritual dedication. Anything that you do, you should do it as unto the Lord, even if it's something physical. Every week, I stand in front of this fireplace, which is in our home. And this house was built many years ago in the early 1990s as a parsonage. It's a house that my church owns. And so because I'm the senior pastor, I have the privilege of living here. Now, what's interesting, I've told you this before, but it bears repeating, that because my father was the senior pastor of our church before me, this is where he lived. So when I was younger, I grew up in this house and I watched as a man named Joe McCraney constructed with his two hands this beautiful brick fireplace. Brick by brick, little by little, with skilled craftsmanship. Not only building this wonderful fireplace, but placing this piece of cedar that is here as the mantle. I watched it come into being. And this skillful art that this man had as a bricklayer, he was doing it as a lover of the Lord, as an act of worship, as a way of saying, Lord, you've given me this divine talent, this way of laying bricks in an artistic and beautiful way, and I'm going to use this for your glory. And no doubt he lives this in his life as a craftsman of doing things as unto the Lord. And so every time I stand in front of this fireplace and speak to you for pearls of the Torah, I think of that in the back of my mind. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to bring that up as we talk about the skilled craftsmanship of Bezalel and Aholiav building the Mishkan. These were young men, by the way. Bezalel, it is said by our sages, was 13 years old when he helped build the Mishkan. Now, We also see that there is a participation in the covenant. The Or HaChaim says that by contributing to the construction of the Mishkan, see, the people donated things, they brought materials. Through their offerings, this Terumah, the Israelites actively participated in sanctifying their environment and themselves. They took part. There was a partnership. I think that is so important, a partnership in the artistry of the Mishkan. This act of building the Mishkan is viewed as a communal and spiritual endeavor, binding the nation in a shared commitment to uphold the divine law and the divine purpose. Now, finally, we have the enduring legacy of the Mishkan. The Mishkan embodies the culmination of divine instructions, artistic excellence, and the covenantal relationship between God and Israel. Every element, from the ark to the court, reflects a deeper spiritual reality as interpreted by the Or HaChaim. The construction of the Mishkan is seen as transformative. It's a transformative act that elevates the physical world into a dwelling place for the divine, setting the stage for Israel's ongoing spiritual journey. Now, let's be a bit metaphorical for a minute. This brick behind me, the Jewish world would say that there is a spark, a divine spark, that can be elevated in this brick. And that what this man Joe did is elevate the spark of Kedusha, of holiness, inside this brick. Because in building something for this home that would house pastors' families, that what this is doing is this simple brick is being used as something that elevates, something that becomes holy. Now, let's be a bit metaphorical for a minute. If I were to build a brick wall between two neighbors because they're not getting along, and we want to have something that separates, that keeps people out, well, that may not be elevating the divine spark that is in the bricks. And that's the whole idea of Judaism, is everything has what's called a klippah. And the klippah is neither good nor bad. It means a shell. The klippah of this brick, the shell of the brick, you needed to go beyond that shell, go past that shell, break that shell, and find the spark within and elevate it. This fireplace provides warmth and beauty in a home where ministry happens. So this brick was elevated, turned into something holy. Bricks that would be used to separate or to cause division would not be elevating that spark. It would turn into a klippah that is hiding the holiness. What we want to do is to have what's called a klippah nogah, or a translucent shell where the light can shine through, like the skin of a grape that is translucent. You could hold it up to the light and you can peer through it. You could see light shining through. That's what we need to do. So even something as simple, tangible, and physical as brick, as gold, silver, bronze, precious stones, physical things like this can be elevated to a spiritual level when they're used in service of the divine. And that's exactly what happened with this fireplace. It's what happens when I lead worship with a guitar. It's just wood and metal, but the spark is mined and it is elevated to something holy when I use that guitar as a tool in holiness. So I'm praying that you will find those sparks in the things in your life, so that a tent is not just a tent, it's a sanctuary. That a building isn't just a building, it can be a home where holiness happens. So think about that in your lives. And early Shabbat Shalom to you and to your family. And may all God's richest blessings be applied to you and in your lives be made manifest. And I pray that the peace of God will guard your hearts and our Messiah, Yeshua. Shalom and Kol Tuv.